What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I'm back with another album review for you guys, and this, while I was looking more forward to the Bloodbath album yesterday, I am now talking about the biggest release that came out on September 9th of this year, and that is the latest studio offering from one of the godfathers of metal as a whole, the one and the only, Ozzy Osbourne, with Patient Number 9. So yeah, I've been a big fan of Ozzy Osbourne pretty much throughout my whole life, ever since I was a little wee lad, and I heard classic rock radio, and I heard his stuff in Sabbath, his early solo stuff, then getting into songs like No More Tears and Crazy Train, and then going back and listening to like the deep cut Sabbath stuff that he was a part of, and the deep cut solo stuff. And I'm a huge Ozzy Osbourne fan, so yeah, it's interesting to talk about a solo album, since I don't think I've ever reviewed a solo album from Ozzy Osbourne on this channel at all. So now this album could end up being his final one. I mean, we all said that about Ordinary Man when it came out 2.5 years ago, but this one could be it. However, there are a lot of guest stars on this album. However, the main constants: on bass, you have Robert Trujillo from Metallica and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. And then on drums, you have Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers. And kind of a timely thing here, but Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters before he sadly passed away, which is still shocking. But as far as guitars, we get different players on a lot of songs, and I'll mention those through these songs. And we kick things off with, oddly enough, the longest track of the album at nearly 7.5 minutes, the title track, Patient Number 9, with the legendary Jeff Beck, who anyone who doesn't know who Jeff Beck is needs to just go. I'll just say, because Jeff Beck is a guitar legend. Now, this song starts off with like this eerie introduction with like manic laughing and rambling from Ozzy, before it gets into an odd riff. And what I mean with an odd riff is the tone of it was odd, but you get a pounding bass line, and all that happens throughout the verses. The chorus does bring in more beef to the guitars, as well as some cool dynamic shifts. The little lead lines that you get in the choruses here and there are tastefully done by Jeff, and then the lead sections here, it's Jeff Beck. What else do you want? I mean, you get little dive bombs, feel, and melody kind of all mashed together, even though, and I'll talk about it at the end, sometimes the leads on this track do get a little bit buried. And I'll explain more when I get to the closing statements of the album. But the bridge returns to that eerie feel, as it makes you feel like you're about to go into, or be put into a sanitarium, almost. But then we get to the second track, and the second shortest song at a little over 3 minutes, Immortal, which features Mike McCready from Pearl Jam and Mad Season, who I think is a very underrated guitarist. And you start off with a badass bass line before you get into a riff and a groove that feels like Pearl Jam, like the song Even Flow. Kind of reminded me of that song a little bit, and that vibe continues through pretty much the entire song. The verses have a cool groove, same with the choruses. However, in the chorus, you do get like a slightly more uplifting guitars, which was pretty cool. And then the leads on this track have a little bit more shred, which again showcases, I think, how underrated Mike McCready is as a guitarist. Then we get into Parasite, which is the first of 4 tracks to feature Zakk Wylde. And this one starts off with a thick, heavy monster riff, pulse-pounding bass. However, the drums sound almost electronic. I mean, it's Andrew Watt doing the production again. But yeah, it was just an odd contrast to the bass and the guitars. The verses feel more mid-tempo, while the choruses speed up to like almost classic metal influence, kind of like early Ozzy, like Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, like a little bit more sped up tempo stuff. But then on the leads, I mean, it's Zakk Wylde doing leads. You're going to get a lot of chaos and, no pun intended, wild things with power and shred and just all sorts of stuff. But now we get into what I think was the best song of the album, and what I think should have been the closer, No Escape From Now, featuring the riff master, the riff lord, the godfather of metal, along with Ozzy and Geezer and Bill Ward, Tony Iommi. Dark acoustic guitars with spacey vocal layerings from Ozzy that feel very much like Black Sabbath. The guitars, the bass, and the drums come in gradually one by one during the first verse, but then in the remaining verses, it gets doomy and they are packed with darkness. And then the chorus, that darkness turns much more murky, which is very appropriate for something that would sound like Black Sabbath. And then the leads on this track, I mean, Tony tearing down the lead with feel, shred, and dark melodies. And even after the second lead that Tony does, you get the classic Sabbath swing, which was fucking amazing. So after some high points early on, then the album kind of dips a little bit with this next track, One of Those Days, which features another guitar legend, Eric Clapton. You have a dark yet beautiful acoustic line to start the song, followed by a beautiful clean electric lead to kind of set a mood. And yeah, the verses on this track didn't really stand out, and the chorus felt like a country chorus, and I just wasn't quite into it. But the lead work from Clapton feels like Clapton leads, packed with melody and blues influence all throughout. So really, Clapton was like the savior of this song, because other than that, nothing really stood out about this track aside from Clapton's presence. But then we get to the second track with Jeff Beck, and that's 1,000 Shades, acoustic guitars to kind of set like a sorrowful mood, as it felt kind of like a second part to the song Back on Earth, which, great Ozzy song. The verses pretty much stays in that sorrow atmosphere, and it even continues into the chorus, but yet you get some like more somber mellotrons and moody bass work to kind of complement that atmosphere a little bit. And then the lead on here, Jeff Beck, I think this lead stood out more than the leads he did on the title track, because they're more prominent in the mix, and it matches that somber sorrow feeling that this song is delivering to your ears. Then we get into Mr. Darkness, which is the second track and the first of 3 in a row with Zakk Wylde. Dark but soothing acoustic guitars that feel like a mix of Sabbath, Alice in Chains, and even like Diary of a Madman era Ozzy. And the verses slowly builds up the song with the drums, the bass, and like the background ambience. The chorus gets heavy and it's classic Ozzy era, like No More Tears, but yet also felt like Eternal Idol era Black Sabbath, like particularly the song Ancient Warrior. If you listen to Ancient Warrior and then you listen to the chorus on Mr. Darkness, you'll find some similarities in terms of like the tempo and the riff work, which I actually liked. Then the bridge starts off with like a Sabbath-inspired riff, and then it transitions into the leads. And once again, Zakk Wylde's going wild on the leads. Flying high again. More Ozzy puns. And then you actually get another cool, like, Sabbath swing moment in here, too. So I guess this song felt like Zakk wanted to channel his Black Sabbath influence on this track, which I thought was really cool. Then we get Nothing Feels Right, which, again, was Zakk Wylde. Clean guitar and bass line, as it felt like something out of No More Tears once again. And it continues with those clean guitars and the bass line through the verses and the pre-choruses. The choruses definitely bring more beef to the guitars, as well as some cool keyboards to accentuate the vibe of the song. Speed picks up briefly after the choruses before they settle down. And then Zakk, with the leads on this track, has more feeling going on, but there are moments of shred, but it helps to showcase Zakk's diverse lead work. And I think this was, I'd say next to Mr. Darkness, the best lead from Zakk on the album. But then we get to the final song with Zakk, and that's Evil Shuffle. Big, heavy riff with heft to it, as well as a quick-fire lead that follows. And the verses feel like a middle ground between like blues and groove metal, kind of like a groovy Judas Priest song or a Pantera song. The choruses, however, was where I felt the song kind of fell flat a little bit as far as the choruses. They were overshadowed by the keyboards, and the snare at times felt a little bit lost. I feel like if the keyboards were a little bit toned down and the drums, particularly the snare, was a little more prominent, I think the choruses would have benefited massively. The bridge gets a little doomy, but with a tasteful bass line, and then one more lead from Zach that goes wild. But now we get to degradation rules, or I can never say this word right the first time. Degradation rules. There we go. With Tony Iommi, the second and final song with Tony. Heavy riff, once again from Tony, with drums that accentuate that riff. And even the old school harmonica comes back from Ozzy. I always like hearing harmonica from Ozzy. He does it very well. The verses stay feeling very Sabbathy in terms of the instrumentation, but the bass also has some more room to shine. And while the chorus, some people might look at this chorus as being juvenile and dumb, yeah, it's silly and simple, but it's catchy and I think it's funny. And I think there is room for comedy in metal lyrics when done right. And I actually thought the chorus on here was pretty damn hilarious. And the remaining choruses after the first do actually bring out more beefy riffs from Tony, and even more solid lead work from Tony delivering on all fronts. But then after a funny song, then we hit probably the worst song of the album, Dead and Gone. This one I wish could have been just cut off of the album, personally. This felt too poppy, it felt too overproduced. Like, the drums, again, feel very electronic, and the choruses, like Ozzy's vocal layers, were just a little bit too much for me. Though the bridge has some more heft to the guitars, but it's not enough to save the song for me. At least that's just how I felt. Then we get to the penultimate track, God Only Knows, with Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction on guitars. And this one was definitely a big step up in comparison to Dead and Gone, though I think this should have been more towards the beginning, like in the first half of the album, instead of being one of the closing tracks. Though it has an eerie beginning with the guitars and the drums providing atmosphere as the vibe feels doomy, but at the same time almost uplifting. However, the drums sound almost electronic to me, and that just kills it for me a little bit. But the vibe is apparent in both the verses and the choruses. However, the choruses brings in choir vocals and more epic ambience to it. And then the lead here we get from Navarro, while the tone is a bit strange, I like the feel it's providing, and even little moments of shred to show that even Dave Navarro is an underrated guitarist. So it was a good song, definitely a huge step up compared to Dead and Gone. And then you end with the shortest song at under 2 minutes, Dark Side Blues. I think this should have been like the bridge song between the first half and the second half of the album. It was a fun little harmonica, bluesy, guitar, spacey vocal track, as it felt like old school blues, but I think it would have benefited if it was like in the middle of the album as opposed to closing track. But overall, now I alluded to earlier the production. The production definitely felt different from song to song, and it shows, because there will be moments where the drums sound almost electronic, but then you get songs where the drums sound hefty. Other times, just depending on the guitarist, the tone felt a little bit staticky or squawky. Other times, the tones felt hefty and heavy. So I feel like the production could have benefited if it was much more uniform, and it just makes this album feel inconsistent, in my opinion. There are some great songs on here, but then you get some filler tracks, and then one stinker with Dead and Gone. I feel like it, and also, this album's over an hour long, so it's like there's just too much going on this album. I feel like if a couple of, especially the title track, could have had some of the fat trimmed off, and like songs like Dead and Gone, let's see, One of Those Days, Evil Shuffle, and Dark Side Blues could have been taken off of the album, I think it would have made this album a lot stronger, in my opinion. But overall, I thought overall this was a good, solid album. I don't think it's amazing, like I've heard some people say, but I don't think it's as bad as others say. I'm going to meet in the middle. I think this is a good, solid album. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. There are some great stuff on here, but yeah, there's some filler and even a terrible track, and the production, I wish could have been more uniform across all these songs. But if this is going to be the last album from Ozzy, I'd say he ended off on a solid note rather than... I think he went off with... Well, we can't assume that this is going to be the last one because Ozzy might still want to do music, even though he's not looking the best right now, and I think maybe it might be time to hang it up and not have stinkers after this, because that would be sad. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for patient number 9. But anyways, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think of the new Ozzy album? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, horns high. See you guys soon.
Alright, well, I'm on a secluded island right now. So I have no idea where y'all are.
You're just on an island paradise while we're over here fighting for our lives.
We're at the same coordinates I was at
so many
before.
sounds out
Just
there.
killed a
Right?
zombie by
Okay, I'm here. Oh my god!
They were multiplying!
There's so many! What the fuck?
There are so many zombies! What is this? I don't think I've ever seen that many zombies in a
I don't want to be out here
ever in my
anymore. I've
life.
decided.
Must be
I've decided I don't want to be here. Okay, never mind. I'm not heroic, as it turns out.
Uh-oh, we got a badass.
Okay, well, you know what? It was fun while it lasted.
Oh god, don't give up on